My 5-year-old son doesn't even know how to tie his shoes yet, but he sure knows how to draw his mother cheating on me in crayon. I always figured the first crack in a marriage would be something dramatic, shouting matches, slamming doors, a lipstick stain on a collar. Instead, it was a smiling stick figure man in our daughter's school art project, holding hands with my wife while I stood awkwardly drawn in the corner, smaller than the family dog. The picture was titled, "My Family," in shaky letters, and underneath my mini-me was a scrawled question mark, like my son wasn't sure who I was supposed to be. It was during parent night, a torturous semi-annual ritual where they lure you into tiny plastic chairs and pretend glue eating and finger painting are signs of genius. The classroom smelled like Play-Doh and diluted despair. My wife was late, of course, running from work, which I'd long accepted was code for, "I need time to fix my face and alibi." The teacher, Mrs. Langley, beamed at us like some cheery executioner and asked us to walk around and enjoy what your children have created. So I did. There it was, right in the middle of the wall, our son's masterpiece. Crayon Mom in a purple dress, beaming. Next to her was a man, taller than my stick figure, darker hair, with a red tie. I haven't worn a tie in 6 years. They were holding hands, little hearts floating over their heads like some demented Hallmark ad. Me? Off to the side, not even touching the family dog. Just standing there, question mark above my head. I stared at it longer than I should have, like the damn thing was going to blink or offer a confession. When my wife finally walked in, flustered and air-kissing, she barely glanced at the wall. I nudged her. "Hey, you see what our little Picasso made?" She tilted her head, squinted, and gave a half-laugh that barely reached her eyes. "Oh, he's so imaginative," she said, brushing it off. But she couldn't stop glancing at the drawing. Her jaw was tight. Her hand twitched when she reached for her purse. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. That moment told me everything I needed to know. Kids draw what they see. Kids don't lie with crayons. The rest of the night was a blur of passive-aggressive small talk and juice boxes, but I watched her carefully. She wouldn't stop looking at the picture. I saw something flicker behind her smile, panic, shame, maybe both. On the drive home, she was quiet. Normally, she'd ramble about the other moms or complain about Mrs. Langley's passive-aggressive tone. This time, nothing. Just her fingers tapping the steering wheel, too fast, too sharp. I stared out the window, silent, letting her drown in her thoughts. My son sat in the back, humming a tune, completely unaware that he had just lit the fuse. When we got home, she excused herself to the bathroom for an unusually long time. I could hear her moving things, opening drawers, probably deleting messages, checking if anything was left open. She knew. She knew I knew, even though I hadn't said a single accusatory word. That was the best part, watching her squirm in the silence. I poured myself a whiskey and sat at the kitchen table. The echo of that drawing burned into my mind. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. Everything I'd suspected, all the weird little things, the way she dressed up for errands, the sudden need for privacy on her phone, the vague answers when I asked where she'd been, they all snapped into place like a jigsaw puzzle you didn't want to finish. But the truth was there, drawn in waxy primary colors by a child too young to know what secrets were. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, she tried to initiate conversation. "He's just a kid, you know. Kids make stuff up." Her voice was too high, too rehearsed. I nodded slowly, eyes never leaving hers. "Yeah," I said. "Funny what they pick up on, though." I saw her flinch, barely perceptible. She was unraveling, and she knew it. That drawing wasn't just a child's innocent mistake. It was a mirror, and she couldn't bear the reflection. I went to bed early that night. She stayed in the living room, probably messaging her crayon lover, trying to convince herself this wasn't falling apart. But it was. And the best part? I didn't have to say a damn thing. The cracks were already showing, and I was just getting started. We used to share everything, or at least I thought we did. Mornings began with coffee and silence, our way of saying we were comfortable without filling the space with noise, and evenings ended with her head on my chest, sighing about work, the kids, life, mundane things that, in repetition, became our version of intimacy. I never needed fireworks. I just needed consistency, the quiet warmth of knowing I was enough. And for years, I believed I was. She used to laugh more, not that polite, distant chuckle she'd mastered later, but a real one, the kind that made her eyes wrinkle at the corners and caused her to smack my arm when she couldn't breathe. Then, one day, I noticed the absence of it. Not abruptly. It was more like a fog rolling in. At first, she started going to bed before me, claiming exhaustion. Then she began waking up earlier, before I did, saying she was meditating. I tried to be supportive, even bought her one of those overpriced yoga mats she left unrolled in the living room for aesthetic. She became obsessed with her morning routine, lemon water, deep breathing, journaling. She stopped wanting coffee with me. Said caffeine made her jittery. Funny, it never had before. Her wardrobe changed next. Slowly. Shirts with plunging necklines appeared, then gym clothes that looked more like fashion statements than anything practical. I commented once something like, "That's new." She smiled, not at me, but through me. "I'm feeling good about myself," she said, almost daring me to challenge her. I didn't. How could I? Isn't that what we're supposed to want? For our partners to thrive? She started using words she never used before: alignment, emotional labor, space. At first, I thought she'd gotten really into some podcast. I joked that she sounded like a TED Talk. She didn't laugh, just stared at me like I was the child she regretted having. She got protective of her phone, then turned off message previews. Claimed it was for mental clarity. Then one day, I walked past her car in the garage and saw a pair of sunglasses in the cup holder. They weren't hers. Definitely not mine. A brand I'd never heard her mention. I opened the car door, picked them up, and stared at them like they might answer me. I waited for her to come home and watched her reaction when I casually placed them on the counter. She didn't even blink. Just picked them up, turned them over, and said, "Oh, those must be Nicole's." She left them when we carpooled. Nicole. The coworker I'd met once, who barely made eye contact. Convenient scapegoat. I nodded and let it go, because letting it go was easier than admitting what I was starting to suspect. She began talking about therapy, not for us, just for herself. "I'm working on boundaries," she said. "Not everything has to be shared." I told her I was happy for her, that I supported her journey. Inside, though, it felt like she was building a fence around herself and placing me firmly on the outside. She'd initiated odd times, once right after an argument, another time while the kids were watching a movie in the next room. It felt more like maintenance than passion, like she was checking a box. I used to be able to read her, one glance, one sigh, and I'd know what kind of day she'd had. Now I couldn't tell if she was about to kiss me or ask for a divorce. One night, she came home with a new purse. Expensive. Designer. I commented on it lightly, and she shrugged. I deserve nice things. I didn't argue. I just watched her walk away, the purse swinging like a middle finger. Her social media, once flooded with family photos and captions like "grateful for my little tribe," slowly turned into filtered selfies and inspirational quotes. She started tagging fitness brands. One day, her entire profile went private. I asked why. "Too many creeps," she said. But I wasn't a creep. I was her husband. Or at least I used to be. I still tried. I planned a weekend trip, just the two of us, no kids. She said she couldn't get the time off. I checked with her boss. She never asked. I didn't tell her I knew. Instead, I came home with takeout from her favorite Thai place, acting like everything was fine. She barely touched her food. Said she wasn't hungry. "I need to focus on myself," she whispered later that night, staring at the ceiling like it held all the answers. I've been so consumed with being a wife and a mother, I don't even know who I am anymore. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to find herself by losing me. But I didn't. I just nodded, like a fool clinging to a sinking ship, pretending I didn't see the lifeboat she'd already reserved for one. I told myself it was a phase, that maybe she was going through something she couldn't articulate. But deep down, I knew. You don't lock someone out of your life unless you're letting someone else in. The smile was still there, but it never reached her eyes. Not anymore. She told me she was going to a mindfulness retreat with her growth group, some blend of yoga, journaling, and women chanting in circles about self-love and lunar energy. I even helped her pack, folded her favorite hoodie, handed her the noise-canceling headphones she loved, kissed her forehead like an idiot sending his wife off to heal. She smiled, all soft and distant, the kind of smile people give each other before saying goodbye forever. The retreat was in the mountains, she said, barely any signal. So when her iPad, synced to her phone, lit up at home 3 hours after she left, I wasn't expecting it. I was on the couch, helping our daughter with a jigsaw puzzle when I saw the notification flash. "Just a preview. Can't wait to have you in my arms tonight. Room's ready. Bring that little black thing you wore last time." I froze. Not because I didn't know what it meant, but because I did. I didn't rush to open it. I didn't panic. I told my daughter we'd finish the puzzle later, kissed her on the head, and walked into the kitchen. Picked up the iPad. Scrolled up. The texts were endless. Photos. Hotel addresses. times. Voice notes with whispered filth I couldn't believe came from the same woman who once cried at Disney movies. She hadn't gone to a retreat. She booked a suite at the Red Fox in cheap, quiet, out of town, with just enough class to keep suspicion away and just enough sleaze to keep the lights dim. The texts weren't new. This had been going on for months. Plans to meet. Laughter over lies, she told me. It was a single line buried in the thread that gutted me clean. He's too soft to suspect anything. He still thinks I'm working on our marriage. I stared at that sentence until my vision blurred. Not with tears. Those had dried up months ago, but with something colder. A switch flipped. Everything after that was just noise. I walked upstairs, sat on the bed we used to share, and stared at the framed photo of our family from 3 years ago, the beach trip, before everything rotted. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there, the iPad resting on my lap like a loaded gun. My mind wasn't spiraling. It was sharpening, calculating, running a checklist. That was the exact moment the man she used to know died. Whatever love I still had twisted into something hard, clean, and surgical. I thought about our kids. What they saw. What they heard. What she was exposing them to by default. She hadn't just betrayed me, she'd rewritten the entire architecture of our home with a lie, and decorated it with trust one had given her freely. I locked the iPad, set it on the nightstand, got up, looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't recognize the face looking back, but I liked it better. Colder. Focused. Detached. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to beg for answers. That would give her power. No, I was going to wait. Watch. Build. Because if she wanted a war, she should have made damn sure her enemy was blind. And I wasn't blind anymore. I was wide awake. I became a ghost in my own home, not haunting it, but hunting in it. She still smiled at me in the mornings, called me babe, kissed me absent-mindedly before heading out to her group workshops, completely unaware that every kiss now landed on a landmine. I didn't confront her because I didn't want her to stop. I needed her to keep dancing in her fantasy while I stripped the stage around her. I started simple, revisiting our shared bank statements under the guise of budgeting. That was my first breadcrumb. A pattern. Small transactions, always at the same coffee shop near the edge of town. Not unusual on their own, but always during times she claimed to be at therapy or yoga. I went to that coffee shop one afternoon, just sat there in my car across the street, waiting. She wasn't there. But a man was mid-30s, well-dressed, the type that polished his shoes and moisturized his hands. He didn't go inside for coffee. He sat in his car too, scrolling, waiting. I watched until a silver SUV pulled up next to him, my wife's. She didn't even glance around. Just smiled, leaned across the console, and kissed him like they were long-lost lovers returning from war. She drove off. He followed. I didn't. Not yet. I had enough for now. Enough to confirm she wasn't sloppy, she was arrogant. She thought she was untouchable. That gave me an advantage. I installed a second iCloud account on the family tablet, synced to her phone under a generic name. I didn't read the messages immediately, didn't need to. What I wanted was her pattern, her timing, her tone. When she spoke to me kindly, when she withdrew, when she picked fights, it all lined up like a code. I started asking her trap questions, softly, with a smile. You still seeing Dr. Emma? You mentioned her last Tuesday. She blinked, paused, nodded. Yeah, it's helping a lot. Dr. Emma didn't exist. Never had. I created that name a week ago during a conversation about mental health. She bought it, filed it into her script. Every word she gave me after that, I measured against the lies I had sown and watched her hang herself on them, thread by thread. I sent flowers to her office under a different name, with a fake note. Had a great time last night. I waited. She never mentioned them. Not even a thanks for the surprise. Which meant she didn't get them, because she wasn't there. Or worse, she had to hide them. I didn't ask. I didn't react. I simply marked the date and checked her location history, which she never turned off on her Apple ID. That day, she wasn't at work. She was at a boutique hotel an hour outside the city. A hotel I called later, under the guise of a booking, and asked which rooms had hot tubs. They gave me the exact floor she'd pinged from. I dug deeper, not into her, but into her accomplice. I found his name in a calendar she accidentally left open on the laptop. Meeting with Mark at 3. Just that. One note. Once. But enough. I checked her email for confirmation receipts. Found a single Uber receipt sent to her spam folder. It matched a ride from his place to hers. I cross-referenced that with the same day she told me she had a migraine and needed to rest. She had rested, all right, just not with me. Still, I stayed quiet. I made myself indispensable at home, cooking dinner, helping with homework, being the father she was forgetting to be a mother around. I wanted her to relax, to trust the mask she was wearing. I asked her questions I already knew the answers to just to see how easily she'd lie. Did you call your mom today? She said she hadn't heard from you. Her eyes flicked right. Of course I did. We talked for an hour. She hadn't. I knew. I texted her mom earlier myself. Weird, I said. Maybe her phone's acting up again. She nodded, relieved, thinking the moment passed. She had no idea I was watching everything. I wasn't angry. I was fascinated. Like observing a snake shedding its skin while thinking it's still a butterfly. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to break. I was going to bleed her dry, starting with her credibility, then her dignity, and finally, her legacy. The kids still loved her. Still kissed her goodnight. But even they were starting to ask questions. Why is Mommy always on her phone? Why doesn't Mommy come to school pick up anymore? Why did Mommy say she was working when we saw her at the mall? I answered calmly. Sometimes grown-ups get confused. And she was confused about just how visible she'd become in her desperation to be invisible. Every lie she told became another brick in the cell I was building. And I wasn't rushing. I wanted it perfect. I wanted her entire illusion, her self-help, empowerment, goddess rising from ashes fantasy, to shatter not with an argument, but with a mirror she couldn't look away from. She didn't know it yet, but I had already stopped being her husband. I had become her reckoning. It was their daughter's 7th birthday party that set the perfect stage. Ironic, really, that the moment of truth would unfold amid balloons, cupcakes, and the hollow sound of happy birthday echoing off the walls of a rented play cafe. Family and friends milled around, parents making small talk while kids ran screaming in socks over foam mats. She was there, of course, dressed a little too well for a kid's party, a little too distracted by her phone, smiling just enough to look maternal. I had spent the morning pretending everything was normal, setting up decorations, slicing cake, tying ribbons, hugging guests. All the while, the video sat on my phone like a loaded chamber. I had installed a discreet camera in the spare bedroom of the townhouse she told me she used for alone time, a space she claimed helped her rebalance. What it caught 3 nights before was nothing short of her soul dying on camera. The way she moved. The way she whispered his name. The way she looked comfortable, raw, without shame. I watched it twice, not because I needed confirmation, but because I wanted to memorize her face when she thought I wasn't watching. So at the party, just as the kids were winding down from cake, and she stepped away to take a call, I followed. Not abruptly, just enough to catch her by the hallway near the restrooms, where the noise dulled and no one would interrupt. I held up my phone without a word and played the first 10 seconds of the video, just enough for her voice to slip out, breathy and unmistakable, calling out a name that was not mine. She froze. Her phone dropped. And then, right on cue, she started the script. It's not what you think, she said, eyes starting, voice shaking. I stayed silent. She reached for the phone, and I pulled it back with a calm precision that made her flinch. We were just talking, she added, her voice a little louder now, as if volume could erase footage. I didn't blink. She pivoted. It was a mistake. One time. It didn't mean anything. I tilted my head slightly, like I was listening to an audio tour of a museum built from lies. She stepped closer. You never paid attention to me. You stopped seeing me years ago. Her voice was accusatory now, desperate to shift the weight. I could see it in her eyes, the moment she realized the trap had no exit. Her panic tried one last shape, derision. You really went this far? Spying? Filming me? You're pathetic. But her voice cracked, just enough for me to hear the fear behind the teeth. I spoke for the first time then, quiet, deliberate. I didn't record you to catch you. I recorded you to remember who you really are when no one's watching. She blinked. No words. Just silence. I stepped forward slowly. You didn't just cheat. You weaponized trust. You took the father of your children and tried to turn him into a blind, obedient fool while you played goddess with a motel key. Her lips parted, but I wasn't done. You used their bedtime stories as alibis, their school plays as cover, and you were so sure I'd never look. Because I loved you that much. She reached out, maybe to touch my arm, maybe to steady herself. I stepped back. Don't, I said, still soft. Not here. Not ever again. Her face collapsed into something I hadn't seen in years, naked panic. No mascara, no fake tears, just a terrified woman realizing she had finally run out of masks. Behind us, you could still hear the laughter of children, The muffled thump of soft play chaos, parents chatting about summer camps and carpooling. And yet here we were, in a hallway lined with crayon drawings and party streamers, standing in the crater of a marriage she had detonated with her own hands. She looked around nervously, whispering now, "Please, not here. Let's talk at home." I smiled slightly. "You already left home a long time ago. I'm just here for the cleanup." Her breath caught in her throat. "What does that mean?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I just watched her eyes flicker with the realization that something far worse than a fight was unfolding. This wasn't rage. It wasn't jealousy. It was a man who had already accepted the loss and now only cared about how much she'd pay for it. I turned, started to walk away, then paused. "When it's time to blow out the candles, you better smile. For the kids." She stood there, alone, surrounded by children's laughter and her own rising dread. And I hadn't even begun. She came home that night like a hurricane disguised as a person, slamming the door so hard the hallway picture frame tilted, screaming my name like I was the one who had broken something sacred. I didn't flinch. I didn't even look up from my seat at the dining table, where I sat calmly sipping tea, the soft clink of ceramic louder than her footsteps. "You embarrass me in front of everyone," she shouted, voice already cracked, mascara smudged into a war mask. What kind of sick person chooses a child's birthday to pull a stunt like that? I met her gaze for the first time since the party, my expression blank, unmoved. "That wasn't a stunt," I said quietly. "That was reality finally catching up." Her mouth opened like she wanted to swallow me whole, but she hesitated, realizing I hadn't come to the battlefield with armor. I was the field itself, and she was standing barefoot in the fire. She pivoted, of course. "You smothered me," she hissed, arms flailing. "You made me feel like I was trapped in this house, in this perfect little prison of your making." I didn't blink. "You decorated that prison yourself. I just paid the mortgage." Her face twisted. She was used to me softening, reaching for peace, bending to avoid the storm. But I wasn't bending anymore. She stepped closer. "You were boring," she spat. "Every day the same. Same routines. Same conversations. I needed something more." I tilted my head. "Then you should have written a novel, not rewritten your vows in a hotel room." Her breath caught, and for a split second, I saw it, the guilt, the shame, before it mutated into something uglier. "You know what?" she said, voice rising. "This wouldn't have happened if you were a real man. A real man would have noticed. A real man wouldn't let his wife drift so far that she needed someone else." I let her words hang in the air like smoke, slowly poisoning her more than me. "A real woman doesn't abandon her children for orgasms and motivational quotes," I said, calm as steel. She turned, punched the wall with a fist that left more damage to her pride than the drywall. "You're so cold," she muttered. "You used to care. You used to love me." I nodded slowly. "And you used to be someone worth loving." That one hit. I saw her flinch like I'd slapped her, but I didn't raise a finger. She paced now, rapid, frantic, trying to rebuild a version of reality where she wasn't the villain. "You don't understand what it's like to feel invisible in your own home, like everything you do is just routine, expected." I needed to feel alive again. I stood then, slowly, and walked past her toward the kitchen, not because I couldn't hear her, but because I'd already stopped listening. She followed, desperate now. "Say something. Yell at me. Get mad. Do something," she screamed. I turned to face her, leaning against the counter with complete stillness. "Why? You're doing enough damage for both of us." Her eyes were wet now, red-rimmed and bloodshot. "You think this makes you strong?" she asked. This silence. This dead look in your eyes. I didn't smile, but I felt something close to amusement. "No," I said. "It makes me finished." She staggered back, almost tripping over her own feet. "You're just going to give up? Just like that?" I stared at her. "You gave up a long time ago. I'm just acknowledging it." She fell into a chair, finally out of words, or maybe just out of breath. Her face collapsed into her hands, sobbing now, but it wasn't grief. It was fear, not fear of losing me. Fear that she no longer had control over how she'd be remembered. She had crafted a fantasy, a lie dressed as empowerment, but now she was just a woman with her makeup running, sitting in the ruins of a life she chose to burn. "I didn't think you'd find out," she mumbled between sobs. "I didn't think you'd stop loving me." I looked down at her like a stranger. "I didn't stop loving you. I stopped believing you." And belief, in the end, was the only thing holding her illusion together. She realized then what I'd known for days. Her game was over, and there was no one left on her side. The power had shifted so completely that even her tears felt staged, rehearsed for an audience that had already walked out. And still, I hadn't yelled, hadn't cursed, hadn't begged, because I didn't need to. She was unraveling all by herself. Revenge, when done right, should feel less like an explosion and more like a surgical dissection, precise, clean, irreversible. I didn't shout. I didn't post rants online or make emotional calls to friends. I simply started moving the pieces. First, the evidence, painstakingly gathered, cataloged, and backed up on multiple encrypted drives, screenshots of texts, time-stamped location data, the hotel receipt that bore her name and the man's signature, audio clips of whispered confessions when she thought no one was listening. I created a digital folder labeled contingency and shared it with myself through secure email under a name she wouldn't recognize. Then I got to work on the finances. Quietly, I closed our joint credit cards, reported them as compromised. Just a precaution, I said to the bank. I opened a new checking account in my name only, rerouted my direct deposits, and transferred every liquid dollar I could legally claim as mine. She noticed a few days later, asked why the grocery card wasn't working. I shrugged. Fraud alert, probably. She nodded, distracted. I knew she'd forget by the next text from her affair partner. I reclaimed the car title next, her SUV, which I had bought and registered under my name years ago. One visit to the DMV and her ride was legally mine again. I installed a GPS tracker under the frame, not to spy anymore, but to document her habits for the custody battle I was about to launch. Because yes, next came the kids. I contacted the best family law attorney in the state, a woman known for being lethal in court and utterly unmoved by sob stories. I presented everything: her neglect, the infidelity, the disappearing acts, even the psychological toll it had started to take on our children. My lawyer didn't flinch. We'll go for full custody, she said. Supervised visitation at best. I signed the papers without hesitation. At home, I started copying keys, gathering passports, securing birth certificates, locking down every asset that mattered. I didn't tell her a thing. She still thought I was processing, healing, maybe even softening. I let her believe that. It made her lazy. It made her sloppy. Then came the social layer, discreet, brutal, surgical. I emailed her parents a neutral but undeniable summary of events. No emotion, just facts, timestamps, and a link to the evidence folder. I included a line. I thought you should know before the kids ask questions you can't answer. Then her boss, an HR-friendly message sent anonymously, explaining that one of their managers was using company time and resources to carry out a months-long affair that compromised her ability to lead her team. Attached, screenshots. Her promotion disappeared within a week. She still hadn't connected the dots. Still thought it was coincidence. I watched her complain about corporate politics with genuine amusement. I contacted the landlord of the townhouse she'd been renting for her private escapades. Let him know she was violating her lease by subletting to a man not on the contract. He gave her 30 days. I gave her 10. She found out the hard way when she showed up to find the locks changed and her clothes boxed neatly on the porch. Back home, I began preparing the house, our house, for her exit. I switched utilities into my name, updated my insurance, changed the passcodes on the home security system. When she finally got the divorce papers, she didn't understand how it had all moved so fast. She screamed, called me cold, accused me of ambushing her. I said nothing. She still didn't realize every step she took since the moment I discovered her betrayal had been one I let her take, right into a corner I built for her. I had turned her affair into a timeline of self-destruction, handed it to the people whose opinions mattered to her, and did it all without a single ounce of visible malice. And yet, the damage was total. Her friends stopped calling. Her family went silent. Her job became unstable. Her finances, once shared and safe, now looked like a sinkhole. And I hadn't yelled, hadn't cursed. I had simply removed her from every part of the life she thought was still half hers. She still believed there was a way back, that we could talk, maybe rebuild, as she called it once through teary eyes I no longer recognized. But she didn't understand the truth. I wasn't just taking my life back. I was taking the illusion of hers apart piece by piece, and she didn't even know she was already standing in the rubble. It happened at her sister's engagement party, a garden event filled with fairy lights, jazz covers, and the kind of pretentious charcuterie boards that scream upper-middle-class success story. She looked radiant that day. I'll give her that, hair curled, dress fitted, makeup flawless. She smiled at everyone like the queen of grace, kissed cheeks, clinked glasses, complimented outfits. I stood beside her, silent but ever-present, letting her bask in what she believed was a return to normalcy, a fresh chapter after the rough patch. She thought the worst was over. She thought my silence meant peace. What she didn't know was that I had spent the last 3 weeks quietly curating a private group chat titled, "Just So You Know," containing select friends, her family members, her boss, and yes, even her affair partner. Inside, I uploaded the full archive. The messages, the voice notes, the GPS data, the hotel video, trimmed just enough to avoid explicit content but damning in implication. I didn't send it right away. I waited. I watched her laugh with her sister, hug her mother, thank her father for the wine recommendation. I waited until the speeches started, until the microphone was passed to her for the obligatory toast. As maid of honor, she stood there with confidence radiating off her like perfume. "Family," she said, lifting her glass, "is everything." And that was my cue. I pressed send. One button. 1 second. A digital grenade. Within moments, phones buzzed across the lawn. Heads tilted downward. Scrolls began. Brows furrowed. Eyes widened. Her sister's smile faltered mid-toast. Her mother lowered her wine glass without taking a sip. Her father blinked in disbelief, then turned slowly to face me with a look I'll never forget, not anger, not confusion. Just quiet devastation. The buzz around the party changed frequency. Conversations dropped in volume. Laughter stopped. Someone gasped audibly. Her phone chimed next. She glanced at it mid-sentence, still holding the mic. I watched the color drain from her face like ink leaking into water. She paused, blinked, tried to keep going. To love," she mumbled, forcing a laugh, "and forgiveness," and her voice cracked. Her hand shook. She looked up, scanning the crowd, searching for a friendly face. No one smiled back. Her sister turned away. Her mother whispered something to her father and walked off. The affair partner, I noticed, wasn't standing far from the bar. He looked at his phone, then at her, then at me. He set his drink down and left without a word. She watched him go, frozen. I could see it, her brain racing, trying to reassemble the image she had spent years crafting. But it was over. The truth wasn't whispered in rumors or revealed behind closed doors. It had detonated in public, in real time, with everyone watching. Her mask slipped, then shattered. Her jaw clenched, her breathing quickened. "This is a lie," she shouted, suddenly loud, the microphone catching every tremor. "He's twisting things. This isn't what it looks like." No one moved. No one spoke. The silence was worse than shouting. She turned to me, desperate now, eyes wild. "You did this? You want to destroy me? In front of my family?" I didn't say a word. Just stared. Calm. Controlled. Unflinching. She broke then, not into tears, but into fragments. Anger, confusion, humiliation, fear. She turned back to the guests, voice higher, cracking at the edges. "He's making me look crazy. He planned this. He set me up." Her sister walked over, whispered something into her ear. She tried to shrug it off, but her hands were shaking now. Her father finally stepped forward, put a hand on my shoulder, not hers, and said quietly, "You didn't deserve this." "I'm sorry." That was the moment she realized she had no one left. That the people she counted on to defend her were already choosing which side of the line they wanted to stand on. She dropped the microphone. It hit the ground with a dull, final thud. No applause. No music. Just her standing alone in the middle of a party she could no longer claim as hers. And I stayed. I didn't walk away. I didn't look away. I let her feel every ounce of exposure, every gaze, every whisper. She looked at me one last time, like maybe I'd offer her an escape hatch. A word. A touch. A moment of softness. I gave her nothing. Because she had taken everything. And now, she finally knew what it felt like to be the one left standing in the ruins, while the one she betrayed stood untouched, unmoved, watching her fall with the same silence she used to bury him. The second confrontation wasn't planned. It exploded into being like a lightning strike, raw and unpredictable, sparked by a single word at the worst possible time. It was the following weekend, a barbecue her parents had arranged to clear the air, their last desperate attempt at maintaining some semblance of family unity. She showed up late, sunglasses on, fake smile glued to her face like she still thought charm could erase consequences. I was already there, talking with her father, who had gone quiet since the exposure, speaking to me more like a son than he ever had during the marriage. The moment she walked into the backyard and caught sight of me, her posture stiffened, her mask slipping as she scanned the crowd for control. But control was already gone. Her mother gave her a tight, hesitant hug, then moved away quickly. People avoided her eyes. Her sister didn't even look up from her drink. The air was brittle with judgment, the kind of silence that says everything without saying anything. I stood with my arms folded, waiting, because I knew she'd crack under the weight of being ignored. And she did. So what now? She suddenly shouted, voice slicing through the hum of quiet conversation. Are we just gonna pretend like you're the victim? That you didn't push me into this? Conversation stopped. Plates were lowered. A few guests instinctively took a step back. I didn't move. I just stared. She took a few steps forward, emboldened by the silence. You think you're some kind of hero? She barked. Dragging our lives through the mud in front of everyone? You think this makes you strong? I turned to face her fully, calm but charged like a coiled wire. No, I said, voice firm but level. I think it makes me honest. Something you haven't been in years. Her eyes widened, then narrowed into slits. You've humiliated me, she spat, her voice trembling. You planned all of this just to destroy me. I stepped closer, just enough to remind her who still held the floor. I didn't destroy you. You did that all on your own. I just held up the mirror. Someone near the grill let out a sharp, involuntary damn. Her father rubbed his temples. Her sister bit her lip and looked away. Her mother shook her head and whispered something to an aunt. You never loved me, she screamed, tears forming. You loved control. You loved playing the martyr while you let me rot in that house like some Stepford wife. My laugh was short, bitter, humorless. You didn't rot. You decorated it. With lies. With hotel room receipts. With your new definition of self-care on your knees for a man who didn't even show up when it mattered. That one hit. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. She stepped back, mouth open, eyes darting. You're disgusting, she hissed. You're vindictive. You're heartless. No, I said, stepping forward, eyes locked on hers. You know what's heartless? Tucking our kids in with one hand while texting him with the other. Pretending to go to therapy while renting out your own little love nest. Using your own family as cover while you tried to live two lives. That's heartless. She swung then, not a punch, but a slap, fast and desperate. I caught her wrist before it landed, firm but not violent. Don't, I said coldly, releasing it like something toxic. Her mother stood up, grabbing her daughter's arm. Enough, she said quietly, not to me, but to her. Stop it. Her father stood next to her now, expression stern. We saw the messages, he said flatly. You don't get to rewrite this. She turned to them, voice trembling. He made me feel invisible, she pleaded. He never saw me. He was always so distant. He was raising your children, her sister said, standing now. He was showing up when you didn't. The affair partner, Mark, had somehow slithered in, thinking maybe he could still save face. He stood by the fence, watching everything fall apart, and the moment she turned toward him, he shook his head and muttered, I didn't sign up for this. Then he left. Just like that. She watched him go, her mouth agape, utterly undone. She turned back to me, voice broken now, small. Why are you doing this? She asked, shaking. Because, I said slowly, you need to feel everything I did, the betrayal, the disbelief, the silence, the shame. You need to stand in it. Breathe it. Own it. She dropped to her knees in the grass, mascara streaking, sobbing uncontrollably, no longer the curated woman of Instagram posts and vision boards. Just broken. Alone. Real. And I stayed. I didn't walk away. I didn't offer a hand. I let her sob, let her choke on her own ruin, surrounded by everyone she used to fool. Because that was the moment she finally understood, redemption wouldn't come with forgiveness. It would come with accountability. And she had just begun to pay. It didn't take long for the world she built on lies to collapse around her. Within weeks, the whispers became walls, the stares turned into silence, and the silence transformed into a cage she couldn't break out of. Her job let her go under the guise of organizational restructuring, but everyone knew it was the emails, the screenshots, the whispered questions in the hallway. The HR director, once her lunch buddy, wouldn't even make eye contact during her exit meeting. Her social media, once flooded with self-love quotes and filtered brunches, went dark. First the comments turned cruel, then her friends disappeared, one by one, until she was talking to herself in empty echo chambers. The affair partner was gone the moment the illusion shattered. No more hotel sheets and secret smiles, just a ghost who left her on read, then blocked her on every platform like she was a problem he'd never admit to knowing. Her parents stopped returning calls. Her sister, who once idolized her, now pretended she didn't exist. Even old college friends chose sides, and they didn't choose hers. At the grocery store, people looked through her like glass. Neighbors she used to wave at now turned away or pulled their kids a little closer. She moved out of the city within a month, rented a cramped studio in a town no one cared to ask questions in, and picked up hours at a health food store, stocking shelves, folding eco bags, forcing smiles for strangers who didn't know her name, and wouldn't care if they did. Then came the messages, small, desperate, quietly sent late at night. I miss you. Can we talk? You were always the only one who really knew me. I never answered. Not once. And still she sent them. Until one day, she knocked. Middle of the afternoon, sunlight bouncing off her tear-swollen eyes, holding a folder of old photos and her trembling voice in both hands. Please, she whispered, standing on the porch where we once watched the kids play in the yard. Please. I don't know who I am without you. I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw nothing. No beauty. No rage. No regret. Just a woman I used to know, a woman who carved up her own life with a smile and now stood holding the pieces like they were someone else's problem. I still love you, she said, voice cracking like her spirit. You were the only thing that ever felt real. I let the silence hang for a long, long time before I finally spoke. Strange, I said. I don't even remember your name anymore. I closed the door before she could answer. Not with cruelty, just with finality. And that's when it truly ended, not with shouting, not with revenge, but with a door that would never open for her again. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it hit the way it was meant to. Tell me, where are you listening from? And more importantly, did you enjoy watching her fall?